You know what nobody tells you about becoming a profitable trader? It doesn't happen overnight. And it sure as hell doesn't announce itself with fireworks and champagne. Trust me, I've been to the top of the mountain more times than I can count. And I've also been at the bottom staring up, wondering how I got there again. My name is Jesse Livermore, and over my decades in the markets, I've made millions, lost millions, and made them back again. And somewhere in all that chaos, I started noticing patterns. Not just in the markets, mind you, but in myself. There were these subtle shifts, these quiet moments, where I realized I was finally becoming the trader I always knew I could be. Today, I'm going to share with you the 7 signs that told me I was turning the corner from losing trader to profitable trader. And here's the thing, these aren't the signs you think they are. It's not about suddenly having a winning streak or finding some magical indicator. These signs are deeper, quieter, and honestly a lot more uncomfortable than you'd expect. Be losing money right now, or if you're breaking even and can't figure out why you can't push past that barrier, or if you're making money but giving it all back in a few bad trades, this video is for you. Because I've been in every single one of those positions. Multiple times. So stick with me for the next half hour and I'll tell you exactly what changed. Not just in my strategy, but in my entire relationship with the markets. Let's get into it. The first sign I noticed, and this one surprised me, was that I stopped caring about being right. Now before you think I've lost my mind, hear me out. When I was younger, trading out of bucket shops in my 20s, every trade was personal. If the market went against me, it felt like a personal attack, like the market was calling me stupid. So what did I do? I'd hold on to losing positions, convinced that if I just waited long enough, the market would prove I was right all along. I remember this one trade in Northern Pacific Railway stock back in 1901. I was so sure the stock was going down, had all my analysis lined up, everything made sense, but the stock kept climbing, and instead of cutting my loss and moving on, I held on because I needed to be right. I needed to prove to myself and to everyone watching that Jesse Livermore knew what he was doing. That trade nearly wiped me out. But here's what changed years later. I started having losing trades, and I'd just shrug, cut the loss, move on. And it wasn't because I stopped caring about making money. It was because I realized the market doesn't care about my opinion. The market doesn't care if I spent 3 days analyzing a stock. The market doesn't care if I have my reputation on the line. The market just is. When you reach that point where you can take a loss without it bruising your ego, that's when you know something's shifting inside you. Because trading isn't about being right. It's about making money. And sometimes, making money means admitting you were wrong in under 5 minutes. I've got a quote that changed my life, and I want you to really absorb this. The market is never wrong, opinions are. Think about that for a second. Every time you hold a losing position because you're convinced you're right, you're putting your opinion above what the market is telling you. And I can tell you from experience, that's a war you'll never win. So the first sign you're becoming profitable? You stop fighting to be right, and you start fighting to be profitable. Those are 2 very different battles. The second sign is even more subtle, and it took me years to recognize it in myself. I stopped looking for the next big score. Now, this is going to sound strange coming from a guy who made millions on single trades, but let me explain what I mean. When I was desperate, when I was broke or struggling, I'd walk into the market every day looking for that one trade that would change everything. That home run, that massive winner that would solve all my problems. And you know what happens when you're hunting for home runs? You swing at garbage pitches. I remember after one of my bankruptcies, I was clawing my way back. I had a small stake, maybe $500, and I needed it to become $50,000, fast. So I started taking these wild chances, jumping into stocks on rumors, chasing momentum without any real edge. I was like a gambler at a roulette table, betting on red because it had to hit eventually, right? But then something shifted. I can't tell you the exact day it happened, but I noticed I was coming into the market differently. Instead of looking for that one magical trade, I was looking for the next good trade. Just the next one. Not the trade that would make me rich, but the trade that made sense based on what the market was showing me. It's like I stopped trying to hit a grand slam every time I stepped up to the plate. I just wanted to get on base. And you know what? When you start collecting base hits, pretty soon you look up, and you've scored more runs than the guy who's been swinging for the fences all day. There's another way to think about this. When you're looking for that one big score, you're trading from a place of need. You need the market to do something for you. You need to make money. You need to prove something, and the market can smell that desperation. It's like blood in the water. But when you're just looking for the next good trade, you're trading from a place of patience. You're telling the market, I'll wait for you. I've got time. Show me something worth taking, and I'll take it. If not, I'll check back tomorrow. That shift from need to patience, that's the second sign you're turning the corner. Here's the third sign, and this one's uncomfortable to admit. I started getting bored. Yeah, you heard that right. Bored. And at first I thought something was wrong with me. Here I was doing what I loved, trading the markets, watching the tape, and suddenly it felt like work. Regular, sometimes tedious work. Let me paint you a picture. When I was losing money, trading was thrilling. Every position was an adventure. My heart would race. I'd watch every tick, every movement, completely absorbed. It was exciting, it was dramatic, it was exhausting. But when I started becoming consistently profitable, something changed. I put on a position, set my stop, and then I'd just wait. Maybe I'd go have lunch. Maybe I'd read the newspaper. Maybe I'd take a walk. The drama was gone. And here's the thing nobody tells you. Boring is profitable. Drama is expensive. I remember sitting in my office one afternoon, watching a position I had in steel. The stock was doing exactly what I expected, slowly grinding higher. And I realized I wasn't excited. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't anything. I was just watching, like watching paint dry. And that's when it hit me. This was what profitable trading felt like. It wasn't supposed to be thrilling. It was supposed to be methodical. The thrill, the excitement, the adrenaline rush, all of that was just my emotions trying to get involved in something that should be purely mechanical. You want to know why most traders lose money? Because they're chasing the feeling, not the profit. They take trades because it feels exciting to have skin in the game. They hold losers because the drama of, will it come back, is more compelling than the boring act of cutting the loss. But here's what I learned. The market pays you for being boring. It pays you for doing the same thing over and over, day after day, without needing it to be exciting. The market pays you for being disciplined when discipline is boring. So if you start finding yourself bored with your trading, if the thrill is gone and you're just executing your plan day after day, congratulations. That's not a problem. That's the third sign. You're becoming profitable. As the great trader once said, there is nothing new in Wall Street. There cannot be, because speculation is as old as the hills. Whatever happens in the stock market today has happened before and will happen again. When you truly understand this, the excitement fades and the work begins. The fourth sign showed up in an unexpected place: my sleep. I started sleeping through the night again. Now, if you've never laid awake at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, wondering if that position you're holding is going to destroy you when the market opens, then you haven't really traded. Not the way I did, anyway. For years, I couldn't sleep. Even when I was making money, I'd wake up in cold sweats, running through scenarios in my head. What if I'm wrong? What if there's news overnight? What if the market gaps against me? My mind would race through every possible catastrophe, and by the time morning came, I'd be exhausted before I even started trading. But then something changed. And it wasn't that I stopped caring about my positions. It was that I knew, with absolute certainty, that I had done everything I could. I had my stops in place. I had sized my positions correctly. I had followed my rules. There was nothing more to do, and that's when the sleep came back. I remember the first time I noticed it. I had a significant position in Union Pacific, and normally a position that size would have kept me up all night, checking prices on my ticker at home, pacing around, imagining every possible disaster. But this time I went to bed, and I slept. Solid, straight through, and when I woke up I realized why. It wasn't that the position was any less risky. It was that I trusted my process. I trusted that if the market went against me, my stop would get me out with a manageable loss. I trusted that I hadn't bet more than I could afford to lose. I trusted that this one trade, win or lose, wouldn't define me. That trust in your process, that's what lets you sleep at night. And when you can sleep through the night even with positions on, that's when you know you've got your risk management figured out. Because here's the truth. If you can't sleep, you're trading too big. Simple as that. It doesn't matter what your strategy is. Doesn't matter how confident you are in your analysis. If the thought of what might happen tomorrow keeps you up at night, your position size is wrong. When I was young and reckless, I thought being unable to sleep was a sign of commitment, a sign that I was serious about my trading. Now I know it was just a sign that I was over-leveraged and terrified. So the fourth sign? You sleep like a baby, even with money on the line, because you know that whatever happens, you've managed your risk and you'll live to trade another day. The fifth sign is going to sound counterintuitive, but stay with me. I started making less trades. Yeah, the path to profitability for me wasn't doing more, it was doing less. A lot less. When I was struggling, I was always in the market, always. If I wasn't in a position, I felt like I was missing out, like money was being made without me. So I'd force trades. I'd find reasons to get into stocks that didn't really meet my criteria. I'd trade out of boredom, out of fear of missing out, out of a desperate need to be doing something. I was what they call a chronic overtrader, and it was killing me slowly but surely, one commission and one bad entry at a time. But then I learned something that changed everything. I learned to wait. I remember there was a period, must have been around 1915, where I didn't trade for almost 2 months. 2 months. I'd come into my office every day, I'd watch the tape, I'd analyze the market, and I'd do nothing. Because nothing I saw met my criteria. Nothing was setting up the way I needed it to set up. And you know what? Those 2 months of doing nothing were more profitable than the 6 months before them where I was trading every day. Because when I finally did see a setup that met all my criteria, I could go in big. I could be aggressive. Because I knew I was right. There's a saying I came up with over the years. It was never my thinking that made me big money. It was my sitting. Think about that. Sitting, not trading, just waiting, just being patient, just letting the market come to you instead of chasing after it like a desperate fool. Most traders think they're paid to trade. They're not. They're paid to wait for the right trade. Big difference. When you're losing money, you want to trade your way out of the hole. When you're breaking even, you want to trade more to make more. But when you're profitable, you realize that less is more. Quality over quantity. Every single time. So the fifth sign you're becoming profitable? Your trade count goes down, way down, and your profit per trade goes up. You're not day trading your account to death anymore. You're waiting for the setups that matter, and when they show up, you take them, and then you wait again. Patience isn't just a virtue in trading, it's the entire game. The sixth sign is something I see in my journal entries from my profitable years versus my losing years. I stopped blaming external factors. This one's tough to admit, but it's crucial. When I was losing money, everything was someone else's fault. The market was rigged, the big players were manipulating prices, the news was wrong, my broker was slow, the tape was acting crazy. There was always something or someone to blame for why my trades weren't working. I remember one particularly painful stretch in the early days where I lost a bundle in cotton. And I convinced myself it was because some big speculator was manipulating the market against me. Like they knew I was in the trade and decided to move the entire cotton market just to take my money. How's that for an ego? But here's the uncomfortable truth I eventually had to face. Nobody was manipulating the market against me. Nobody even knew I existed. The market was just doing what markets do. And I was on the wrong side of it because I made a bad decision. That's it. No conspiracy, no manipulation. Just me making a bad trade. When you stop making excuses and start taking responsibility, That's when you can actually learn from your mistakes. Because if it's always someone else's fault, then there's nothing for you to fix. But if it's your fault, your decision, your mistake, then you can study it, understand it, and not do it again. I started keeping a journal, and in the beginning it was full of excuses. Took a loss today because the market was acting irrationally, got stopped out because of manipulation. Would have been profitable if not for that surprise news, but in my profitable years, the journal changed. Took a loss today because I entered too early and didn't wait for confirmation. Got stopped out because I placed my stop too tight and didn't give the trade room. Would have been profitable if I had followed my rules instead of second-guessing myself. See the difference? In the first version, I'm a victim. In the second version, I'm in control. And being in control, even of your mistakes, is empowering. Because if it's your fault, you can fix it. If it's the market's fault, you're helpless. So the sixth sign? You look in the mirror instead of pointing fingers. You take ownership of every trade, good or bad. And weirdly enough, once you start doing that, the bad trades become less frequent. Because you're actually learning from them instead of just blaming them on bad luck. And now we get to the seventh and final sign. This is the one that told me I had truly turned the corner from struggling trader to consistently profitable trader. Because whenever I trade, I stopped wanting to tell everyone about my winners. When I was young and hungry, every time I had a winning trade, I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. I wanted everyone to know how smart I was, how I called it perfectly, how I made a killing. It was about validation. It was about proving to the world and to myself that I was somebody. I'd walk into the brokerage house after a big win and I'd make sure everyone knew about it. I'd casually mention my profits in conversation. I'd drop hints about my positions. I needed people to know I was winning because deep down, I wasn't sure I was a winner. But something changed when I became consistently profitable. The need for validation just disappeared. I remember having one of the best trades of my career in 1907 during the panic. Made an absolute fortune shorting the market. And afterwards I went home. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't brag. Didn't need to. Because I knew that was enough. The trade wasn't about proving something to someone else anymore. It was just business. Just another day at the office. Just me doing what I do. And here's what I realized. When you need to tell people about your winners, it's usually because you're trying to convince yourself more than them. You're trying to hold on to the feeling of being right, of being successful, because you're not sure when it'll come again. But when you're consistently profitable, winners become routine. They're expected. They're part of the process. And you don't need external validation for something you do every week. Plus, and this is important, talking about your winners makes you vulnerable. It makes you attached to your image as a winner. And the moment you become attached to that image, you start making decisions based on protecting that image, rather than protecting your capital. I've seen it happen over and over. A trader has a great run, tells everyone about it, builds up this reputation, and then, when things turn south, they can't admit it. They can't cut their losses, because they've told everyone they're a winner. So they hold on to losers, hoping they'll come back, because they need to maintain that image. That's how you go broke, I know. I've done it. So the seventh and final sign you're becoming profitable? You become quiet about your success. Not because you're ashamed, but because you don't need the applause anymore. You trade for yourself, for your account, for your future, not for the validation of others. There's a powerful quote I want to leave you with here. The game of speculation is the most uniformly fascinating game in the world, but it is not a game for the stupid, the mentally lazy, the person of inferior emotional balance, or the get-rich-quick adventurer. They will die poor. Read that again, die poor. Not because they don't know the technical side of trading, but because they lack emotional balance. Because they're chasing something other than profit. So there you have it. The 7 signs that told me I was finally becoming a consistently profitable trader. Let me recap them for you because these are important. First, I stopped caring about being right and started caring about being profitable. Second, I stopped looking for the next big score and started looking for the next good trade. Third, I started getting bored with trading because the drama disappeared and the discipline took over. Fourth, I started sleeping through the night because I trusted my process and my risk management. Fifth, I started making fewer trades because I learned that patience is more profitable than activity. Sixth, I stopped blaming external factors and started taking complete ownership of my results. And seventh, I stopped wanting to tell everyone about my winners because I no longer needed external validation. Now here's what I want you to understand. I didn't experience all 7 of these signs at once. They came gradually, over years, and even after I recognized all 7 in myself, I still had losing streaks. I still made mistakes. I still went bankrupt. Multiple times if we're being honest. Because here's the thing they don't tell you. Becoming a profitable trader doesn't mean you never lose again. It doesn't mean you've figured out some secret code that makes you invincible. It means you've developed the mindset and the discipline to handle losses without them destroying you. I made millions and I lost millions. But every time I came back, these 7 signs were there, guiding me. They were the foundation I built on, even when everything else crumbled. And the reason I'm sharing this with you today isn't because I think I have all the answers. Hell, I proved multiple times in my life that I didn't. But these signs, these shifts in thinking, they're real. They're what separated my profitable years from my losing years. So if you're struggling right now, if you're losing money or breaking even or making money but giving it all back, I want you to look at these 7 signs. Not as some checklist you can rush through, but as mile markers on a long journey. Ask yourself, am I still fighting to be right, or am I willing to be wrong quickly? Am I chasing home runs, or am I collecting base hits? Am I addicted to the drama, or am I embracing the boring discipline? Can I sleep at night, or am I worried sick about my positions? Am I overtrading, or am I waiting patiently for the right setups? Am I making excuses, or am I taking ownership? Am I seeking validation, or am I quietly doing the work? Those questions will tell you where you are on the journey. And if you're honest with yourself about the answers, they'll tell you what you need to work on next. Trading isn't easy. Anyone who tells you it is hasn't done it long enough. It's a battle against the market, sure, but more than that, it's a battle against yourself, against your fear, your greed, your ego, your need for excitement, your impatience. And the traders who win that battle aren't necessarily the smartest or the most educated or the ones with the most capital. They are the ones who recognize these signs in themselves and do the hard work of changing their behavior. I've been trading for decades. I've seen fortunes made and lost. I've been at the top of the world and I've been at the bottom. And through it all, these 7 signs have been my compass. They've told me when I was on the right track and when I was veering off course. So take these signs seriously. Watch for them in yourself. And when you start noticing them, even 1 or 2 of them, know that you're on your way. You're becoming the trader you need to be. It won't happen overnight. It didn't for me. But it will happen if you're willing to do the work, to be honest with yourself, and to let go of the things that are holding you back. The market will still be here tomorrow. And the day after that, and the year after that. The question is, will you be ready when your moment comes? I hope so. Because there's nothing quite like the feeling of finally cracking the code. Not of the market, but of yourself. If this resonated with you, if you saw yourself in any of these signs, do me a favor. Hit that like button so I know this helped. Subscribe if you want more stories from my years in the market. And drop a comment telling me which of these 7 signs you're working on right now. I'd love to hear where you are in your journey. And hey, if you know another trader who's struggling, someone who's losing money or can't figure out why they can't get over the hump, share this video with them. Sometimes hearing someone else's story is exactly what we need to see our own situation more clearly. Until next time, remember, the market doesn't care about your opinion. It only cares about what you do with it. Now get back to work. Those charts aren't going to read themselves.